Hello everyone, it's Elliot here, and as always, I have been watching a lot of films on physical media. I have a bit of a big collection update for you today. Lots of film recommendations. A lot of them are quite niche things. Many of them I had never heard about before. So hopefully there'll be something here for everyone. So let's start with a big one, probably one of the biggest cinematic events of this year. It's Barbie. This is, of course, the 4K disc. I saw this film opening day. My wife and I went and saw it, and we loved it. From start to finish, we were laughing the whole time. So, of course, I was excited to get this and watch it in my own home. The 4K looked and sounded pristine, as you would expect from a new film on the format. It was the film itself that didn't quite hold up on second viewing. I still had a great time, but what I realised on this second viewing was that this film is trying to do too much at once. And I think it's not doing any particular thing amazingly because it's trying to do all of this stuff. It's trying to have the social, political commentary. It's trying to be funny. It's trying to appeal to people of all ages. It's doing the music, the dancing, the choreography, and it's got this mother-daughter story at the centre of it. It's really packing in too many ideas which I don't think are fully explored in the runtime of the film. It's still a great experience, a lot of fun. It just didn't hold up for me on my second watch. Now for something completely different and back to regular boutique Blu-ray programming. It's a release from Second Sight Films. It's Chopper, the film from Andrew Dominik, which is one I had never seen before, but I was so pleasantly surprised by this. And I genuinely think that Andrew Dominik is one of the more underrated directors working today. Chopper is one of his earlier films made in Australia, starring Eric Bana as Mark Chopper Reed, one of the most infamous criminals in Australian history. And what is a very violent, thrilling film is also very comedic and very funny. And Eric Bana gives such an incredible performance in this film. It's a film that bears a lot of similarities with the film Bronson because it's focusing on this criminal, it's looking at the inner psychology of the man, and both films have this weird, strange humour to it, as well as the insane violence. After watching it on this disc, I think it's such a great film, and I strongly recommend it to anyone who thinks that it sounds like their sort of thing. In particular, this disc is a great one to get from Second Sight. As always, it's their brilliant limited edition packaging. You get a big book inside, you get art cards, and the film looks and sounds great on the Blu-ray. So this one gets a high recommendation from me. Sticking with Second Sight now, I have the Ginger Snaps trilogy, which again has this limited edition treatment from Second Sight Films. And this was just in time for the Halloween season. If you're not familiar with these movies, they are concerning werewolves. These two sisters, one of them starts to turn into a werewolf when she first gets her period. So naturally there is a commentary here about coming of age, what it's like to be a teenage girl. But also there is some great violence, some great creature effects here. Horrific at times, but also it has that central teenage angst, that teenage drama. I think the first film in the trilogy is great. The follow-ups are less good in my opinion, but they are a good accompaniment to this first film. It's a tremendous set, even though it's gone past Halloween, but let's be honest, horror is for any time of the year really. You get the 3 films, tons of special features, a book, art cards. It's everything you want in a limited edition. Next up, something I was so glad to see arrive. It's the film Bug from William Friedkin, which had never had a Blu-ray in this country. I believe it's not had one in the US as well. And this is coming from Imprint in Australia. This is such a peculiar but brilliant film, following Ashley Judd, Michael Shannon, as they meet one another. Both of them are sort of on the fringes of society, outsiders, you could say. And they find, this potential attraction between one another. But there is a lot of mystery in Michael Shannon's character. Where has he come from? What is he all about? And the story gradually descends into conspiracy, this idea that these people are being monitored at all times. And that's what gives the film such depth, because it's not only dealing with loneliness and perhaps romantic connection between two people, it's also looking at this paranoia, this conspiracy, this wanting to connect all of the dots and put the blame on someone else, whether that's a person or an institution. Friedkin sadly passed away recently, but we are left with this brilliant filmography of his. And even later on in his career, in the 2000s, he was still at an experimental level. You know, he wasn't trying to recreate the success he had with The French Connection or The Exorcist. He was doing something different even this late in his career, which is totally commendable. This is a great region-free edition from Imprint with 2 audio commentaries and some extra features. And it actually looked very good on the disc indeed. I was thinking that this wasn't going to look very good because it hadn't had a release elsewhere. That's usually a sign that the materials available are not good enough to release. But actually, I was very pleasantly surprised by the presentation here. Now for some very exciting things. I have a selection of titles from what has turned out to be my favourite label of the year. I am of course talking about Radiance Films, and the slate that they've had for the last month or so has been absolutely mind-blowing. The perfect accompaniment to Halloween, but also, just like I said before, these films are for any time of the year, and they will get rewatched by me over and over. First was one of their bigger announcements, Messiah of Evil. This is the limited edition set, which sold out all 3,000 copies before it was even released, I believe. It is about to be reissued as a standard edition, so don't worry if you missed it, because this is one of the biggest surprises, one of the biggest film discoveries for me this year. This is a weird slice of American Gothic from the 1970s concerning zombies, very Night of the Living Dead inspired. Sort of predates a lot of the area that John Carpenter would delve into, David Lynch. It even feels a bit like the films of Jean Rollin or Jess Franco. So if you're into that Euro horror, then this is the kind of thing you will enjoy. It's taking so many inspirations, so many ideas from different places, but forming and shaping them into something that really is quite unique. I can't pinpoint another film that is exactly like this. And it also looks great from the 4K scan that's presented on the Blu-ray. It comes with tons of special features on the disc, so even if you can't get the limited edition with the book inside, there's still so much on the disc to enjoy. So please, if you can get your hands on this, if you can get the standard edition, this is a great film. Please do check it out. Then I greatly enjoyed The Dead Mother. This is a film that begins with this murder, and this young girl who survives the murder is left as a mute. She's severely traumatized, and a chance encounter with the murderer makes him decide that he needs to kill this surviving young girl. It's a deeply disturbing film that goes into so many different areas. I wouldn't want to spoil anything, but this is a great piece of Spanish cinema that I frankly would not have discovered without Radiance. Then we have the Gothic classic finally coming to a UK Blu-ray. It's The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock from Ricardo Freda, starring Barbara Steele. I mean, this really is the pinnacle of Gothic genre cinema. This Radiance Blu-ray from the new restoration presents different versions of the film which were released around the world, as well as audio commentaries, interviews, you know the score. There's so much in here. Please do check this out if you're a fan of Gothic cinema. Then we come to Scream and Scream Again from Gordon Hessler. This is a film that presents 3 titans of horror cinema. You've got Vincent Price, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And when you look at that lineup, you think that this must be one of the best horror films of all time. Now, it's somewhat misleading because all 3 of these actors are actually barely in the film. Peter Cushing is in it for like 1 scene. Vincent Price shows up at the start of the film, then he's not in it till the end. There is never a scene where all three of these guys are in the scene together. So yeah, somewhat misleading on the promotion of this film at the time of its release, but this is classic British horror genre fare. Very enjoyable. There's all sorts of weird sci-fi horror stuff going on in here, and I think it's a very enjoyable movie if you set your expectations aside from those three main actors, because like I said, they're not in it as much as I would like them to be in the film. That said, the presentation from Radiance is brilliant on the Blu-ray. Tons of special features. I'm sounding like a broken record here. If it sounds like your kind of thing, if you're into Hammer horror, Amicus, then this could be something for you to check out. One more Radiance title now. I've got Visible Secret from Anne Hui. This was a real gem discovery for me. I know her work from Boat People, but this is something that's very different to that film because it's looking at ghost stories and genre. Like a lot of Asian horror that was made at the start of the 2000s, it's taking those genre tropes, those genre ideas, but exploring issues of modern life in a technologically advanced society, trying to fit in with, social dynamics. So in that respect, it is much more than just a ghost story. This is about people in society just trying to get through life, and I found it completely endearing. Next, from a label that had never seen a release in the UK up to this one, it's Raro Video's The Night of the Devils. This is a partner label release from Radiance. They've taken this release of The Night of the Devils that came out in the US about 10 years ago, and they have presented it here on a UK Blu-ray for the first time with a brand new encode, with all of the same special features. So it's great to have this film on disc here. This is a vampire story based on the Wordalac. This is a famous story that was adapted in Mario Bava's Black Sabbath, and it's a very well-made, alienating horror about isolation and about feeling trapped in this one environment with these monsters closing in on you. It's brilliant Italian horror. Even though this is a new encoded disc for the UK release, it is the same source that was used for the much older Blu-ray. So, in my opinion, it's showing its age a bit. It would look much better if there was a 4K restoration of this. But quite frankly, I'm just glad to have it in any form that is available. Because, you could hold out for a future 4K restoration, but for a title that is this niche, when is that going to happen? Sticking with weird Italian genre cinema, it's Alberto Di Martino's blazing magnum, or Shadows in an Empty Room. This is the cult classic disc from StudioCanal, and what a joy this is to have on Blu-ray. This is a very strange film that is sort of half poliziotesque, it's a bit giallo-esque. While it's an Italian film, it was shot entirely in Canada, and bizarrely it features this incredible car chase sequence in the middle of it, which must have been inspired by the likes of The French Connection. You've got Stuart Whitman, John Saxon, and Martin Landau all turning in pretty bizarre performances, which just make this into the cult classic that it is. So if you're into that weird side of Italian cinema, this is one for you. A bit of a highlight for me from Eureka Entertainment last month was She Shoots Straight, the Hong Kong action film starring Joyce Cadenzi, Karina Lau. This is about this young police officer who is newly married into this family of fellow police officers, and she has to prove her worth to her new family members. All the while she is trying to battle this Vietnamese gang that is causing chaos in the city. It's brilliantly directed by Corey Yun. It's got Sammo Hung in here. This is classic Hong Kong genre cinema that I am becoming so enamored with after all these releases from Eureka and 88 Films and Arrow. So yeah, I'm fully on board with all of the Hong Kong action cinema. Please, I just want more and more of it. This is a great surprise. Something very special from Umbrella Entertainment is the Pusher trilogy. in this collector's box set. 3 early works from Nicholas Winding Refn, and it's a pleasure to have these on Blu-ray because these haven't been available on Blu-ray for the longest time, I think, and you could only get them on some pretty dated DVDs. In this collector's edition, you get all 3 films, you get a booklet, and they are numbered to 750 copies. So if you want this, you better snap it up quick. This is a Region B title with many special features. There's an audio commentary from the director on each one of these films. There are posters in here, there are art cards. This is for the real Refn collector, and I'm a big fan of his work, so I had to have this. Another collector's edition from Umbrella is Hercules Returns. This is a comedy film looking at the reopening of a cinema, and the only film they have to show is an old Hercules film, but they have no audio track. So the people running the cinema have to do their own commentary and sound effects over the film. I have to admit, this film is very Australian, so if you don't get Aussie humour, which frankly a lot of the humour went over my head as well, you may not find it as enjoyable as Australians do. But still, I found it very enjoyable, and this is a great set. You get the disc in a slipcover inside, you get a poster, you get booklets, you get this rigid hard case. What's not to like? And then we come to a 4K release that I was very excited for. It's Sam Peckinpah's Cross of Iron. This is the Imprint Films edition from Australia. I had to get this over the UK disc because there is some extra stuff in here that is very appealing. And it is a long-awaited upgrade of the older Blu-ray that I have here from StudioCanal. Now, if I open this up, you get 2 cases inside. Now, interestingly enough, I mentioned StudioCanal. You actually just get the StudioCanal UK 4K disc. So that is the 4K version you get here. It is exactly the same disc. So what is really different with this release is the Blu-ray discs that you get, which are made directly by Imprint. Now, the film looks very good on the StudioCanal 4K disc. There's a lot more detail. It looks very good, probably the best it ever has. Now, there's a question as to the colours of this film. This is a very common complaint nowadays with 4K restorations. It does look like the colours have been pushed to the green end of the spectrum. It's a film that looked very green anyway because it's mostly outdoors. They're all wearing greeny brown uniforms. And one of the ways that you can tell that this isn't really an authentic theatrical presentation of the movie is that on the other disc inside the set, you get the Grindhouse version of the film. This is a scan of a vintage 35mm print of the film from the time of release, which is from a private collection from Mike Siegel, who is one of the experts on Peckinpah. And he himself has commented on how the colours don't look as he remembered in the film. He wasn't consulted for StudioCanal's restoration, and it does look different to this Grindhouse version. The colours are different between this and the 4K. It raises the question which version is correct. I mean, I'm in no position to say so, but I am inclined to believe that the film should look more like the Grindhouse colour version than the 4K disc. The release is stacked with special features, so if you're a fan of this film, this is the version to get because, like I said, the 4K disc is exactly the same as the ones available elsewhere. And that brings me to the end of my big collection update. There was a lot of stuff there that I enjoyed watching over the last few weeks. Hopefully you can take some of those as recommendations for yourself. If you'd like more recommendations, just click the video that's on screen right now. There'll be plenty more to talk about in that video. Until then, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.